My husband initially asked me to become a stay-at-home mother for his daughter, Lizzie, 4 years ago, but I declined at the time. Recently, now 6 months pregnant with our son, I expressed my desire to stay at home, believing it would allow me to better care for Lizzie, who is now 8. In response, my husband reacted with disgust and anger, insisting we had agreed otherwise years ago. He accused me of favoritism towards our son and criticized my parenting of Lizzie. Despite his hurtful accusations, I deeply care for Lizzie and cherish our relationship. His words left me hurt and angry, leading to a period of emotional distance between us. His continued criticism only exacerbated the situation, making me question our relationship further. After putting Lizzie to bed, I confronted my husband about his disrespectful behavior, expressing my frustration with the toxic atmosphere he was creating for his daughter. I insisted that if he had concerns, he should voice them respectfully. His reaction was explosive, but this time, I stood my ground. I asserted that I wanted to work through our issues because I cared about him, but I would not tolerate abusive behavior. He reacted by saying he would sleep on the couch. I firmly reminded him of my pregnancy and my need for rest, asserting my right to the bed. The next day, I suggested we see a marriage counselor, but he refused, claiming the problem was mine alone. I pressed him to explain his issues, and he expressed resentment that I hadn't quit my job for Lizzie but was willing to do so for our son. He accused me of not trusting him as a provider and questioned my commitment as a mother. When I suggested he become a stay-at-home dad instead, he fell silent. He argued that it wouldn't be fair for our son to have an experience Lizzie didn't, and criticized me for breaking our agreement by changing my mind. I defended my decision, pointing out the practical differences between caring for an infant and a pre-K child. He continued to express resentment, calling me unstable for changing my stance. I countered by asserting my right to make decisions about childcare and emphasized my willingness to do more activities with Lizzie to compensate. After discussing involvement in Lizzie's activities and suggesting counseling, my husband became violently angry again. He insisted I return to work 2 weeks after our baby's birth and shut down any discussion about me staying home. Despite my love for him and our children, I refused to be controlled or dictated to about my career or maternal duties. I emphasized the importance of providing a healthy environment for all our children, regardless of past circumstances with Lizzie's mother. When he threatened to deny our son the presence of a stay-at-home mother based on fairness, I reached my limit. I calmly informed him that I was leaving to create space from his controlling behavior and toxic environment. Despite his protests and emotional outbursts, I stood firm, packing my things with the intention to stay with my mother temporarily. His reaction escalated to throwing clothes and screaming, which frightened me deeply. In fear for my safety, I insisted that any attempt to stop me or touch me would result in calling the police. I also called my mother to come and get me immediately. After leaving, we had no contact for a couple of days until he began texting and calling, claiming Lizzie was taking sides and showing instability. He accused me of leaving when he asked for fairness in raising the children. This situation deeply concerned his friend Craig, who confronted him about his behavior. 3.5. But my husband continued to insist that I return to work and denied my request to stay home with our son. Tensions escalated. His family, particularly his brother Daniel, intervened strongly, criticizing his controlling behavior and accusing him of punishing me for his ex-wife's mistakes. Daniel emphasized that I deserved better treatment and that my husband needed to move past his past grievances. Following their visit, my husband began pleading for me to return, claiming he couldn't function without me. However, his attempts to use Lizzie's well-being as leverage upset me deeply. I firmly told him I wouldn't tolerate manipulation involving the children and demanded counseling. Reluctantly, he agreed, and we sought therapy. During therapy, our counselor addressed the unfairness my husband perceived regarding childcare roles. She validated my feelings and stressed that it was natural for me to feel differently towards our biological child versus Lizzie. She emphasized that my care and love for Lizzie were evident and appropriate, despite not having a biological bond with her. Despite initial progress, my husband eventually withdrew from therapy, refusing to compromise on childcare decisions. Faced with his inflexibility and continued disregard for counseling, I decided to pursue legal separation. I established a custody arrangement that limits his involvement during the birth of our son due to my concerns about his behavior. This decision has caused shock and grief among his family, who now support my decision. Despite the turmoil, I maintain contact with Lizzie, reassuring her of my love and desire to remain part of her life. While my decision weighs heavily on me, I believe it's necessary to prioritize my well-being and that of our children in a healthy, respectful environment.